Battle Through the Heavens, Grand World. Chapter 36. Yi Tianqian. After the darkness in front disappeared, a trace of sunlight shone into Xiaoyan's eyes, expelling the endless darkness in front of him. His tightly shut eyes opened bit by bit, and what entered his eyes was a patch of blue sky and white clouds. The sky was extremely clear and bright, and the white clouds dotted the sky. A gentle breeze blew, bringing along a sweet fragrance. Xiaoyan shook his head, and then he immediately leapt up like a fish. He looked at the surrounding scenery, and what he saw was an endless sea of trees. The branches and leaves were luxuriant, and the verdant trees were swaying along with the wind. It was like a rolling green wave that was sweeping over. In the distance, there were numerous huge mountain ranges that were faintly visible. The mountain ranges were endless, and in the depths of the sea of trees, from time to time, a few clear and melodious cries could be heard. It was a leisurely scene. Xiaoyan looked around and immediately realized that something was not right. Before he passed out, the forest domain was in winter, but this place was full of flowers and flowers. The mountains and rivers were green, and the Saint Meteorite mountain that pierced into the blue sky was nowhere to be seen. This instantly shocked Xiaoyan. Could it be that the mysterious ultimate saint expert had brought him to northern or southern forest domain? If that was the case, it would be a big joke. It would be impossible for the Yunluo Academy to arrive in the next few decades. This is the illusion realm I set up. Little guy, who are you? Just when Xiaoyan was at a loss, an old voice suddenly sounded. Xiaoyan was startled and looked towards the source of the voice. In the next moment, a young man in a white robe with white hair and shoulder-length hair gradually appeared. The young man was extremely handsome. His eyebrows were like sharp swords, and there was a sense of pride between his brows. His eyes seemed to be able to see through the world. As he waved his robe, cracking sounds could be heard, and every movement he made was filled with a domineering aura that could rule the world. As the supreme existence of Fighting Key Continent, Xiaoyan's disposition had already become incomparably mature. Even when faced with this ultimate saint expert that seemed to be a legend, his facial expression did not change. Immediately, he cupped his fists and said respectfully, "Kid, Xiaoyan, advance to the fighting monarch in the Fighting Key Continent of the lower realm." His tone was filled with determination and unyielding. The white-haired young man glanced at Xiaoyan. A bright light flashed in his eyes as he slowly spoke. "Are you trying to fool me? The Fighting Key Continent no longer has any fighting monarchs that can help it advance. It has been 10,000 years, how can there be another fighting monarch that can advance?" Xiaoyan was shocked by the sudden burst of energy from the white-haired youth. He hurriedly released a deterrent force to defend against the youth's Haohan Qi. Taking a deep breath, Xiaoyan looked at the white-haired youth. There was no joy or anger in his voice. "Senior, you must be joking. This junior doesn't know you. What's the benefit of lying to senior? This time in Fighting Key Continent, including this junior, there are a total of 5 people who have advanced. In the future, there will be even more fighting monarchs that will advance." The white-haired youth only smiled when he heard this. He didn't bother with this issue anymore. With a wave of his sleeve, a huge fiery red egg that was dozens of meters tall appeared in the sky not far away. Xiaoyan was startled. This was the huge egg that he had obtained at the bottom of the Crimson Fire Flame Wolf Cave. It was already so big. "Originally, I wanted to kill you after chasing away that little black bird. But, the little dragon said that it was still resting in the fire source of your chaos great monarch flame, and that you were the one who brought it out of the darkness. That's why I brought you into this illusion realm." The white-haired youth smiled and touched the huge egg beside him. His eyes were filled with endless love and joy. Hearing the white-haired youth's straightforward words, not only was Xiaoyan stunned, but he also let out a bitter laugh. He respectfully said, "Since that's the case, Junior will thank Senior for not killing me." The white-haired youth waved his hand and said, "I have been dead for tens of thousands of years. This senior sounds too awkward. My name is Yi Tianqian, and you can call me Elder Yi." "Yi Tianqian," Xiaoyan muttered in his heart, then respectfully said, "Elder Yi." Yi Tianqian smiled and moved slightly to Xiaoyan's side. He looked at Xiaoyan a few times and Yi Tianqian nodded in satisfaction. "The little guy's body is quite strong." Xiaoyan was speechless when he heard that. He looked at Yi Tianqian's young face. He kept calling himself me, which sounded even more awkward. When he thought of Yi Tianqian's supreme saint-level strength, Xiaoyan didn't care about these details anymore. He looked at Yi Tianchen with bright eyes and said respectfully, "Elder Yi, can I ask you something?" Yi Tianchen glanced at Xiao Yan. He said lightly, "I know what you want to ask. That's good too. I have been idling alone for 10,000 years. Now that someone has come, I can relieve my boredom." After saying that, without waiting for Xiao Yan to speak, he waved his sleeve. In an instant, a raging wind blew, and both of them disappeared. In the next moment, when Xiao Yan opened his eyes again, he was already standing on a huge square. The square was made of bluestone and looked extremely majestic. Xiao Yan looked around him, but there was not a single mountain range in his sight. It was as if the sky was above his head, and he could hear the rapid sound of the wind. Xiao Yan couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Here, this should be the highest point of this illusory realm. This is the highest peak of this illusion realm. You can look down on the sea of trees for thousands of miles here. An open heart, although it is only an illusion realm, what do you think? Little Xiao Yan, how do you feel? Yi Tianchen slowly walked a few steps. He had already reached the end of the square, but his voice still echoed in Xiao Yan's ears. Xiao Yan could feel the vastness of the high ground. A strong wind blew over, bringing along the sound of rolling green waves. It really made him feel broad-minded. This is a really good place. Xiao Yan sighed from the bottom of his heart. After this interlude, he had become less sensitive to Yi Tianchen's identity as the Supreme Saint. As if he had noticed that Xiao Yan had gradually relaxed his state of mind, Yi Tianchen smiled. He instantly returned to his original position. He briefly organized his thoughts before he slowly said, "Tens of thousands of years ago, Little Long and I were seriously injured in Forest Domain. Little Long had no choice but to return to his initial state. He had barely managed to preserve his origin, but in order to avoid being found, it used up a large amount of its remaining origin to create a black world to hide within. After that, nearly 10,000 years had passed. I met you just as the fire of life was about to be extinguished. Otherwise, do you think that Xiaolong would listen to an imperial warrior's orders with his original personality?" Yi Tianchen said. He looked at Xiao Yan with a smile that was not a smile. Xiao Yan also smiled in astonishment. A trace of happiness flashed across his heart. "My body has fallen. Fortunately, my soul is extremely powerful. Plus, I have some special experiences in the past, and I have secretly created such a vast illusory realm. I have used the Saint Meteorite Mountain in the outside world to confuse outsiders. It has been tens of thousands of years, and I have finally calmed down." After hearing this, Xiao Yan finally understood what was going on. No wonder Man Yun said that even heavenly venerates couldn't find treasures in the Saint Meteorite Mountain. It turned out that the Saint Meteorite Mountain was just a mountain range that could confuse one's vision. Everything was in this illusion realm, but this was also an excellent method. With Yi Tianchen's powerful soul force setting up this illusion realm, it was likely that even an ordinary Supreme Saint wouldn't be able to discover it. Once again gaining a new understanding of the ultimate Saint expert's strength, Xiao Yan hesitated for a moment and said, "Thank you, Elder Yi, for telling this kid. This kid has a presumptuous request, I hope Elder Yi will agree." Yi Tianchen chuckled and stretched out his right hand. A red flame appeared in the former's hand. He looked at the dumbstruck Xiao Yan and said, "Xiaolong still needs your Chaos Great Monarch flame to cultivate. I am also interested in you. If you want to leave, I will not agree to it." The flame in the former's hand was surprisingly Xiao Yan's Chaos Great Monarch flame. At this moment, the Chaos Great Monarch flame had no intention of resisting in Yi Tianchen's hand. It obediently stayed in the former's hand and was extremely obedient. After a moment of shock, Xiao Yan returned to normal. After all, the one in front of him was the most powerful Supreme Saint in the world. It was normal for him to have such a technique, but making a fuss over it would only make him seem ignorant. "May I know what's the matter with Elder Yi?" Xiao Yan asked curiously. He was just a small emperor. What could interest a Supreme Saint? It was definitely not a pile of junk in the storage ring. As a Supreme Saint, there was nothing Yi Tianchen had never seen before. Could he still be interested in the heavenly beasts, heavenly cores, or the fiery spiritual blood? After thinking for a moment, Xiao Yan suddenly looked at the Chaos Great Monarch flame in the former's hand. The most precious thing on his body right now was undoubtedly the Chaos Great Monarch flame. As a powerful monarch flame of a great world, its value was self-evident. Little fellow, you're quite attentive. That's right, I'm more interested in your Chaos Great Monarch Flame. Seeing Xiao Yan looking at the Chaos Great Monarch Flame in his hand, Yi Tianqian smiled faintly and skillfully controlled the Chaos Great Monarch Flame. Looking at Yi Tianqian, who was controlling the Chaos Great Monarch Flame with ease, Xiao Yan couldn't help but think of the cave underneath the Crimson Fire Flame Wolf. The first time the Fire Dragon saw the Chaos Great Monarch Flame, it was also filled with surprise. When it thought of the Xiaoyi and the 9 profound golden thunder devouring each other, it really made Xiao Yan somewhat puzzled. After a long while, Yi Tianqian said under Xiao Yan's impatient expression, "Why do you have the fire source of 3000 thunder Chaos Great Monarch Flames in your Chaos Great Monarch Flame?" Chapter End. Chapter 37. Holy Object Emperor's Flame. Sacred Monarch Flame. 3000 Thunder Monarch Flames. Xiao Yan was startled. He looked thoughtfully at the Chaos Great Monarch Flame in Yi Tianqian's hand. Within the Chaos Great Monarch Flame, there seemed to be a small, faintly discernible lightning dragon swimming about. 3000 lightning monarch flames. Is it also a type of monarch flame? After thinking for a moment, a light suddenly flashed in Xiao Yan's heart and he hurriedly said. Yi Tianqian gave Xiao Yan a strange look and said, "You don't even know this." Seeing Xiao Yan smile bitterly and shake his head, Yi Tianqian immediately looked at the latter unhappily and said, "There are many sacred objects in the great world. Every sacred object is born from the condensation of the natural essence. They are extremely powerful, and these sacred objects have weapons. Clothes, armor, flames. The monarch flame was one of the 12 most powerful sacred objects in the great world. There were currently 36 types of flames that existed in the heavens and earth, and the monarch flame was the total name of all flames that were born from the heavens and earth. This also gave rise to the monarch flame ranking, which was ranked 32nd on the Chaos Great Monarch Flame ranking. The 3000 lightning monarch flames were ranked 27. According to the legends, if all the monarch flames were gathered together, if it was forged into a sacred item, then its power, it can destroy the entire heavenly calamity domain. Yi Tianqian said with mixed emotions. Xiao Yan was also shocked by what he heard. He never thought that there would be a monarch flame ranking similar to the alien flame ranking in this world, and he never thought that the Chaos Great Monarch Flame would only rank 32 on the ranking. However, not only do you have the fire source of 3000 Thunder Chaos Great Monarch Flames in your Chaos Great Monarch Flame, it also seems like it hasn't fully transformed into a true Chaos Great Monarch Flame. Its strength is too weak. No matter how strong the flames on the Monarch Fire ranking are, they can't be compared to it. However, your Monarch Flame is only equivalent to an 8-star Dodi. It is truly a disgrace to the name of the Monarch Flame. Yi Tianqian's stern words were heard by everyone. Initially, he thought that the strength of the Xiaoyi had reached the level of an 8-star Dodi. Even if it was the end of the 8-star Combat Emperor, he didn't think that it would become even stronger. Thinking about it, it made sense. As one of the sacred items of the great world, how could it only have such a tiny bit of strength? A layer of fiery heat quickly surged into Xiao Yan's eyes. He asked, "Elder Yi, do you have a way to completely transform the Chaos Great Monarch Flame?" Yi Tianqian looked at Xiao Yan with his eyes full of melancholy and suddenly grinned. "Little guy, I wonder if you have tens of thousands of Supreme Saints." Xiao Yan was stunned for a long time before he said, "Elder Yi, you must be joking. This kid is just a 3-Dao sovereign. How could it be an ultimate saint expert?" Yi Tianqian smiled. "Then do you have the strength to defeat me?" Xiao Yan's expression changed slightly. Immediately, he waved his hand and said, "How can this kid have such powerful strength?" Yi Tianqian's smile became even brighter. "Since you are not a supreme saint and do not have the strength to defeat me, how can you doubt me? It's just a monarch flame ranked 32nd on the monarch flame ranking, isn't it easy to convert it? Moreover, Xiaolong has also said that your Chaos Great Monarch Flame is too weak and unsuitable for its cultivation. Therefore, even if you don't say it, I will still help you." After listening to Yi Tianqian's last few words, Xiao Yan's nervous heart relaxed a little. Yi Tianqian's question just now almost made his heart beat fast. He really thought that he had offended this ultimate saint expert, but it turned out that it was just a slap on Yi Tianqian's pride. Looking at the frightened Xiao Yan, Yi Tianqian smiled proudly. He had been lonely for tens of thousands of years. Now, With great difficulty, a little guy who looked pleasing to the eye had finally come in. He could take advantage of the last minute to have some fun. Ignoring Xiaoyan's resentful gaze, Yi Tianqian casually tossed the Chaos Great Monarch flame into the sky. He lazily stretched out a finger and pointed at the Chaos Great Monarch flame. In an instant, the clouds in the sky changed. A strong storm was stirred up. The Chaos Great Monarch flame slowly stopped in midair, and slowly turned into a fiery lotus in the storm. The fire lotus remained unmoved in the fierce wind. Very quickly, the flower bud in the center of the fire lotus quietly bloomed and released a column of fire that pierced through the blue sky. Suddenly, the wind and clouds in the sky stopped moving. In the next moment, strands of fiery rain started to float around the column of fire. Just as Yi Tianqian was about to move on to the next step, he suddenly felt something. His deep eyes instantly looked towards the center of the fire lotus, in the middle of a flower bud. There was a small ball of pure red flame that was slowly burning. This was the source of the Chaos Great Monarch flame. Around this small cluster of flames, a nearly transparent lightning thread was quietly floating. The lightning thread looked like a small lightning dragon. Under Yi Tianqian's gaze, the small lightning thread had nowhere to hide. It turned into a small lightning dragon and trembled under the former's gaze. It let out a weak dragon cry. With Xiaoyan's weak strength, he naturally could not sense it, but Yi Tianqian could hear it clearly. This little lightning dragon's aura is exactly the same as the source of the 3,000 lightning monarch flames. Yi Tianqian's eyes flashed. It was as if he was thinking of something. After a moment, he looked at the little lightning dragon with a slightly shocked expression. After that, he shifted his gaze away from the little lightning dragon and left Yi Tianqian's sight. The little lightning dragon instantly disappeared as if it had been granted amnesty. At this moment, the fire lotus key in the sky had completely erupted. A sea of fire burned crazily on the fire lotus, causing the storm's attack to collapse inch by inch, and finally vanish into nothingness. Yi Tianqian smiled and squinted his eyes. In an instant, a majestic soul force surged into the fire lotus from all directions under Xiaoyan's senses. Xiaoyan's face turned pale when he sensed this soul force that caused his heart to tremble. Compared to this soul, the soul emperor's soul that he was so proud of couldn't even withstand a single blow. His soul entered the fire lotus, and in the next moment, Hong Long, the entire sky seemed to be burning up, and it was pierced through by the intense rays of light. Xiaoyan subconsciously closed his eyes, but Yi Tianqian just chuckled. He moved his right hand's 5 fingers as if he was drawing something. Very quickly, the light was extinguished. The storm also retreated quickly. Xiaoyan immediately opened his eyes and looked at the sky. He saw a crystal-clear fire lotus spinning slowly in the sky. At this moment, the fire lotus had no temperature at all. It was as if the fire lotus had completed a sublimation. It was untainted by the mud and was as pure as ice and jade. It was slender and elegant. The flame on the fire lotus had become much more restrained, but Xiaoyan could feel the tremendous power contained within the fire lotus. After sizing up the transformed fire lotus, Yi Tianqian nodded his head in satisfaction. With a wave of his hand, the fire lotus appeared in his hand. He glanced at Xiaoyan, who was staring at the fire lotus in his hand with fervent eyes. Yi Tianqian flicked his finger and the fire lotus flew towards Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan caught it and looked at him. The fire lotus slowly turned into a Xiaoyi. Currently, the appearance of the Xiaoyi did not change much, but its temperament had changed greatly, as if it had become one with the great world. It did not feel awkward at all. The former's strength shocked Xiaoyan even more. At this moment, even he could not clearly see the strength of the Xiaoyi. He estimated that it had at least reached the level of 5 or more sovereign warriors. The fire spirit of the Chaos Great Monarch flame is only at the level of 9 sovereign warriors. It won't be very useful against enemies, but if you are powerful and can control it skillfully, even stronger opponents will suffer a great loss. Xiaoyan nodded in agreement after hearing Yi Tianqian's words. The first flame he got was the green lotus core flame. As his strength increased, the heavenly flame he obtained also became stronger and stronger. However, the green lotus core flame still possessed an extremely powerful strength under his control. It could even injure a Do Sheng. Hence, although this Chaos Great Monarch flame was only a 9 Dao sovereign, it currently appeared very powerful. However, it would ultimately be left behind by him. However, the Chaos Great Monarch flame that he would use with his strength in the future would still be a powerful trump card. Oh right, after you came to the Great World. Did anything unusual happen to the Chaos Great Monarch flame? Yi Tianqian suddenly asked. Xiao Yan came back to his senses and told him about the Xiaoyi devouring the 9 profound golden thunder. After listening to Xiao Yan's words, Yi Tianqian couldn't help but frown deeply. His eyes revealed a thoughtful expression. Seeing Yi Tianqian's expression, Xiao Yan's heart couldn't help but tremble. It seemed like this fallen ultimate saint expert knew a little about it. After a long time, Yi Tianqian finally came back to his senses. He looked directly into Xiao Yan's eyes and said, "What cultivation technique are you cultivating now?" Xiao Yan was startled for a moment, and then he didn't hesitate at all. The Origin Monarch key in his body surged, accompanied by the metallic sound of the Origin chains. The majestic Origin Monarch key condensed into an image in the air, and the meridians on the image crisscrossed. It was the diagram of the human body's meridians. Immediately after, the meridians that were not connected to each other turned red. It was extremely eye-catching. After finishing all of this, Xiao Yan looked at Yi Tianqian and said, "Elder Yi, this is the cultivation technique of this kid." With Yi Tianqian's strength, he could clearly see the circulation route of the flame mantra burning spell with just a single glance. When he saw it clearly, a rare serious expression emerged on Yi Tianqian's face. He had heard from Xiao Yan that the flame mantra burning spell had evolved automatically after he arrived in the Great World. This was something he had never heard of before. Even a sacred item like the Chaos Great Monarch flame had to undergo a thorough transformation before it could be fully integrated into the Great World. However, this cultivation technique was merely something from the lower realm. How could it have such an ability? Could it be that this thing was originally related to the Great World? Yi Tianqian couldn't help but be startled when this thought appeared in his mind. He looked at the image in the sky with an even weirder expression. The Chaos Great Monarch flame was split from one of the 12 most powerful sacred items of the Great World, the Monarch flame. It was still reasonable for a trace of the fire source to descend to the lower realm after hundreds of millions of years. However, according to his knowledge, this strange cultivation technique did not exist among the 12 sacred items. However, if it was not a sacred item, how could it be automatically transformed? Yi Tianqian thought for a long time but could not come up with any clues. Seeing Xiao Yan's expectant look, Yi Tianqian blushed and said something that made Xiao Yan speechless. "You pervert." Xiao Yan could not help but laugh dryly. He did not know what to say. "Although this world is boundless, I admit that I can't recognize everything. But you are just a puny imperial warrior, and a little guy who ascended from the lower realm. Why do you have so many strange things on you?" Yi Tianqian did not have the demeanor of an ultimate saint expert at all. He gritted his teeth and said, "This." Looking at the map of the meridians in the sky, Xiao Yan's heart was filled with endless shock. Even with Yi Tianqian's knowledge and experience, he didn't know about the flame mantra burning spell. And judging from the tone of the latter, this must be something from the Great World, so there were only two possibilities. The first was that it was an ordinary stall. It was normal that Yi Tianqian couldn't recognize it. However, a sacred object like the Chaos Great Monarch flame could only be transformed with the help of humans, while the flame mantra burning spell could be transformed automatically. Just this point alone determined that it was not something to be trifled with. There was only a second possibility. Xiao Yan took a deep breath and looked into Yi Tianqian's eyes. The latter was also looking at him. Before Xiao Yan could say anything, Yi Tianqian's voice, which carried a trace of shock, echoed in this world. "Little thing, your technique might be even more mysterious than the 12 sacred items." Chapter end. Chapter 38. 4 years. Gulp. Yi Tianqian said what he was thinking in his heart. Xiao Yan unconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. It seemed like there really was a possibility. After Yi Tianqian said those words, he looked at the map of meridians in the sky and felt that it was more and more similar. It was a long time before he finally let out a soft sigh. He gave Xiao Yan a strange look. This brat was really strange. If this cultivation technique was really something that was even stronger than the 12 sacred items in the legends, then the future would be limitless. If the news were to spread, perhaps even those legendary Profound Realms seniors wouldn't be able to resist taking action. Clearing his throat, Yi Tianqian said, "This is only a guess, even if it's just a guess. Your cultivation technique is really that kind of legendary holy object. With your current pitiful strength, you aren't qualified to dig it out, so forget about it for the time being." After a pause, Yi Tianqian said with a serious expression, "According to what you said, because of the flame mantra burning spell, you can absorb more flames when you are in the lower realm. But looking at the current situation, your Chaos Great Monarch Flame is creating 3000 Lightning Monarch Flame." Create. Xiao Yan was startled and looked at the Chaos Great Monarch Flame in his hand. The latter's rank on the Monarch Flame ranking was far inferior to the 3000 Lightning Monarch Flames. How could it be created? It's because of the 9 profound golden thunder. A light flashed in Xiaoyan's mind as he opened his mouth and spoke. That's right, Yi Tianqian nodded. If my guess is correct, your Chaos Great Monarch Flame has a devouring ability because of the special ability of the Flame Mantra burning spell. The 9 profound golden thunder should be formed from the source of the 3000 Lightning Monarch Flames. After the Chaos Great Monarch Flame has devoured it, it should be able to create 3000 Lightning Monarch Flames after a period of time. These words sounded ridiculous. Even though they came from Yi Tianqian's mouth, Xiao Yan still found it hard to believe. What was this? If that was the case, wouldn't he be able to easily collect all 36 types of Monarch Flames? As if he could see Xiaoyan's astonishment, Yi Tianqian snorted lightly and said, "Brat, don't be delusional. The prerequisite for the Chaos Great Monarch Flame to be able to create other Monarch Flames is to first devour the fire source of those Monarch Flames. But now, other than the 3000 Lightning Monarch Flames, can you also find the fire source of the other Monarch Flames?" Yi Tianqian's words were like a bucket of cold water that instantly extinguished Xiaoyan's surging passion. Xiao Yan dryly laughed. He also threw this unrealistic idea to the back of his mind. Indeed, with his current strength, it was already lucky enough for him to possess the Chaos Great Monarch Flame. People should know their own limitations. The principle of biting off more than you can chew had long been hidden in Xiaoyan's heart. However, Yi Tianqian looked at the Xiaoyi in Xiaoyan's hand with a profound gaze and said, "According to my estimation, if the Chaos Great Monarch Flame can successfully create the 3000 Lightning Monarch Flame, there will definitely be an intense battle between the two of them. At that time, you might be affected as well. But with your strength of 3 sovereign warriors, I don't think you can handle it. Look at the degree of the 9 profound golden thunder. In a year at most, it will turn into 3000 lightning monarch flames. In these 5 months, you have to try your best to increase your strength to deal with the danger of the monarch flame merging." Xiao Yan was startled in his heart, and then he solemnly nodded. With Yi Tianqian's identity, there was no reason for him to lie to him. Moreover, the fusion of the monarch flames was something that could be imagined with one's toe. The process would definitely be filled with danger. As the master of the Chaos Great Monarch Flame, it was absolutely impossible for him to stay out of this. It seemed like it was urgent to increase his strength during this period of time. Pausing for a moment, Yi Tianqian laughed at himself. Actually, after saying so much, I still have my own selfish motives. The stronger the Chaos Great Monarch Flame is, the more beneficial it will be to the little dragon's recovery. Xiao Yan smiled calmly when he heard that. Yi Yun, old man, please don't say that. The stronger the Chaos Great Monarch Flame is, the better it is for a kid. You have helped this brat so much. This brat is truly grateful to you from the bottom of his heart. Yi Tianqian twitched his mouth and said, this little guy's strength is not good, but his mouth skills are not bad. Hee. Although he said that, Yi Tianqian's heart, which had been lonely for 10,000 years, was still slightly moved. With his experience, he could naturally hear the deep gratitude in Xiaoyan's tone. Before he died, he was also a great figure who was proud of the wind and clouds. The strength of a supreme saint allowed him to run amok in all domains, and his skill in alchemy had reached the acme of perfection. There were very few people who could compare with him, but it also caused him to be extremely arrogant. He had offended many experts of the same level, and although they were afraid of his status as an alchemy saint master, they did not dare to openly oppose him. They still welcomed him with a smile, but when he was targeted by that organization, Furthermore, when two of the saints were sent to intercept him and the little dragon in forest domain, none of the ultimate saint expert helped him in the end. In the past 10,000 years, he had been furious. He had been aggrieved and had reflected on himself countless times. As his consciousness gradually dissipated, he also saw through everything. From the initial arrogance to a peaceful heart. 10,000 years passed, and a trace of loneliness appeared. In his peaceful heart, what Xiao Yan had done and the help he had given the egg had made Yi Tianqian feel grateful and delighted at the same time. One more thing. You will have no problem staying in this illusion realm for the whole year, right? Xiao Yan's heart started beating violently when he heard this. What did it mean to stay with a saint when he was still alive? There was no need to think about this problem. Xiao Yan took a deep breath and tried his best to calm himself down. His voice was trembling because of his excitement. No problem. This year, this kid can calm down and improve his strength. Yi Tianqian smiled playfully and looked at Xiao Yan with a playful look in his eyes. You can still calm down and cultivate during this year. What kind of joke is this? You are the last little guy the first have ever met in my life. If I don't torture you properly, I will be letting down this opportunity. Thinking of this, Yi Tianqian's eyes suddenly lit up. He smiled at Xiao Yan, who was immersed in excitement, and said, "Little guy, this illusion realm of mine will disappear in about 4 years. When that happens, I will die completely. This illusion is different from the time in the outside world. 1 year in the outside world is equivalent to 4 years in the inside world. If you are fine, how about you spend these 4 years to the fullest?" Xiao Yan's heart, which had calmed down a little, once again began to beat violently because of these words. His rapid breathing caused the origin monarch key in his body to become a bit disordered, and the origin chains seemed to be singing softly. Thank you, Elder Yi, for your love. That kid will shamelessly agree. Even though Xiao Yan used to be proud of the wind and clouds and smile at the end of the world, he still couldn't react in time to this sudden huge temptation. He had to hold it in for a long time before he could say this. Yi Tianqian smiled disapprovingly. What he did, a large part of his selfishness was also included. After all, the Chaos Great Monarch Flame was just an extremely weak Monarch Flame. Even if it was fused with the 3000 Lightning Monarch Flames, it wouldn't be any better. However, the little dragon was once a saint-tier holy beast. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to recover in a year's time, so Yi Tianqian decided to let Xiao Yan wait until the illusion realm was destroyed before he could leave. The 4 years in this illusion realm was merely a year in the outside world, although it might reduce the time of the trial by a year. But if he could receive a single instruction from Yi Tianqian, it would be better than a few years of trial alone. In this way, 3 more years of trial time would be equal to nothing. Even without Yi Tianqian's guidance, 3 years was more than enough for him to improve a lot. Based on this thought, Xiao Yan agreed without hesitation. It's settled then. You should cultivate well during this period of time. Increasing your strength as soon as possible will be a great help to the Chaos Great Monarch Flame merging with the 3000 Lightning Monarch Flame. Yi Tianqian paused for a moment. He waved his sleeve, causing Xiao Yan's storage ring to tremble uncontrollably. After that, 6 fire pillars appeared around Xiao Yan. There was a drop of red demonic blood slowly swimming about. Don't waste such a good thing. This thing seems to be used to refine a low-grade medicine pill, but with your soul and strength, you are not qualified to do so. The blood in this pillar contains extremely powerful fire element energy, which is suitable for you. Using this can speed up your cultivation. As he spoke, Yi Tianqian flicked his finger. Following the cracking sound of the stone pillar, the 6 drops of blood slowly dispersed and were absorbed by the 6 jade bottles formed from Origin Monarch Key. Swoosh! A jade bottle flew towards Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's eyebrows twitched. He grabbed the jade bottle that was rushing towards him. I have already gotten rid of the violent energy inside. This pure fire energy is enough for you to advance to the 4th sovereign realm. Advancing earlier, hee. When that happens, it'll be fun. Without waiting for Xiao Yan to hear the last part, Yi Tianqian waved his white robe. Xiao Yan disappeared. Swoosh! A sound of wind breaking was heard. In the next moment, Xiao Yan appeared out of thin air. Before the former could react, he heard a furious roar coming from the side. Then, with a flash in front of his eyes, a black shadow pounced on him. Xiao Yan's expression remained unchanged. The Origin Monarch Ki in his body instantly surged, causing the Origin chains to make a rustling sound. At the same time, Xiaoyan's fist collided with the Black Shadow's head. Wu! Xiaoyan could not help but cry out in pain. He quickly glanced at the slightly red fist, then looked at the Black Shadow in front of him. The black figure was a wolf-shaped devil beast, but it was the strength of a sovereign. It was instantly sent flying when it received Xiaoyan's fierce punch. It wailed continuously along the way, and its body heavily smashed onto the ground like a sandbag. The black wolf whimpered a few times, then straightened its four legs and did not move at all. Once the black wolf died, Xiaoyan, who did not have time to relax, immediately heard the furious roars around him. He instinctively raised his head, and when he saw the hundreds of black wolves in the surrounding valley, his expression changed. It took him a long time to squeeze out a few words from his mouth. The Supreme Saint is even more abnormal. On the square, Yi Tianqian was leisurely sitting cross-legged. He was sipping a pot of fragrant tea that had somehow changed. He seemed to be able to hear Xiaoyan's words in the distance. He smiled and took a sip of the tea. He smacked his lips as if he had not had enough, and then mumbled, "It seems that only the abnormal fellows can obtain the legacy of the Supreme Saint." Lightly and gently, these words were quickly dispersed by the gentle breeze. The sky was still as blue as before. Chapter end. Chapter 39. A change in one's state of mind. Oh! Accompanied by a miserable cry, the last black wolf turned into a wisp of soul force and disappeared under Xiaoyan's iron fist. After using all his strength to get rid of the 100 black wolves, even though Xiaoyan's Origin Monarch Ki was comparable to 5 emperors, he could not help it. The feeling of weakness in his body made Xiaoyan's vision pale. The Origin chains formed by the Origin Monarch Ki had long been used up, and the pain in his body kept stimulating his nerves. Before he could consume the Ki recovery pill, a soul-stirring paleness swiftly surged onto Xiaoyan's face. At the same time, the paleness in front of him instantly turned into endless darkness. Xiaoyan's legs went limp and he collapsed with exhaustion. Before Xiaoyan could recover a trace of strength, a rushing wind sound suddenly sounded. Immediately following that, another black shadow pounced over like the wind. Its movement was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, it arrived beside Xiaoyan. The strong sound of wind breaking and the sudden sense of danger made Xiaoyan's mind tremble. Almost instantly, out of instinct, Xiaoyan rolled to the side. In the next moment, a black sharp claw struck the ground where Xiaoyan had been lying. In an instant, dust was rolling. A hole the size of 2 fists was created. After dodging the black shadow's attack, Xiaoyan finally managed to see the attacker's appearance clearly. It was still a black wolf, but it looked a little stronger than the hundreds of black wolves earlier. Its fur was very dark, and there seemed to be light flashing under the sunlight. Its blood-red eyes seemed to contain blood, and its imposing manner, which was comparable to 5 emperors, was like a sharp sword as it stabbed towards Xiaoyan. Such a weak Ki attack naturally could not affect Xiaoyan, but when the latter sensed the black wolf's strength, his pale face could not help but reveal a bitter smile. With his current condition, he could not even move a finger. It was difficult for him to defeat a fighting monarch devil beast, not to mention this black wolf with 5 emperors in front of him. The black wolf seemed to be surprised that its attack failed. It let out a low roar and looked at Xiaoyan with its copper bell-sized blood-red eyes. A trace of cruelty flashed across its eyes as it slowly pushed towards Xiaoyan. It had miscalculated. Xiaoyan was lying on the ground while gasping for breath. It had never thought that Yi Tianqian would do such a thing, catching it off guard. Wu! The black wolf was about to bite him when Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes and looked at the black wolf that was close to him. He sighed in his heart and endured the reluctance to part. Just as he was about to use the jade elemental bead that he had obtained from Man Li, Yi Tianqian's laughter suddenly rang in Xiaoyan's ears. "Little guy, remember this. If you are surrounded in the future, even if you use all your strength to kill all the enemies, you must still hold back a little to ensure that you still have the strength to deal with other unexpected situations. You will never know when the enemies in the dark will appear and give you a fatal blow when you are exhausted." Yi Tianqian's voice became more and more solemn from his previous laughter. In the end, it even carried a trace of warning. As his voice gradually faded, Xiaoyan sensed that the black wolf beside him had turned into a wave of soul force and dissipated. He also nodded with a solemn expression. Given Xiaoyan's rich combat experience, he naturally knew this shallow truth. However, ever since he arrived in the Great World, the huge difference in strength and status had caused Xiaoyan to be somewhat shocked. Especially after entering the illusion realm, he had no intention of resisting when faced with Yi Tianqian, who was a super saint soul body when he was alive. Being in someone else's territory, the gap in strength between them was like a chasm, forcing Xiaoyan to hand his fate over to Yi Tianqian. Due to this cruel fact, Xiaoyan no longer had any vigilance towards Yi Tianqian. Given the difference in strength between the two of them, it would be useless no matter how much vigilance he had. If Yi Tianqian wanted to kill him, it would be easier than blinking his eyes. Because of this, Xiaoyan had unknowingly lost control of his own fate. Just like just now, his fate had been completely controlled by Yi Tianqian. But what happened to Yi Tianqian just now? What Yi Tianqian said just now was like a bolt of lightning, causing Xiaoyan to instantly understand that no matter how weak he was, his own fate would still be in his hands. Xiaoyan slowly clenched his fists and took a deep breath. The spirit in his eyes gradually recovered. This was not only the recovery of his body, more of a state of mind recovery. Although Xiaoyan had absorbed the deterrent force from the sovereign aura in the depths of his heart, it was as if he had been reborn. He had fully adapted to the great world, but the strengthening of his state of mind didn't keep up. This time, Yi Tianqian's words had enlightened Xiaoyan. Unknowingly, his state of mind had reached a new height. He had once again placed his life in his hands. The sudden change in his state of mind had calmed Xiaoyan's anxious heart down, and he once again returned to his calm state. On the square, Yi Tianqian's brows suddenly twitched. After carefully feeling it for a moment, he smiled slightly and drank the fragrant tea in his cup. He mumbled, "That's more like it. A true expert not only controls the lives of others but also their own lives." When he said this, Yi Tianqian shook his head in self-mockery and sighed. However, controlling other people's lives was easy, but controlling one's own life was extremely difficult. As a supreme saint, he still can't control his own life. How deep is the water in this world? Sighing lightly, Yi Tianqian once again fell into deep thought. In the quiet forest, after recovering his strength, Xiaoyan impatiently took out the white jade bottle that Yi Tianqian had given him. In fact, with his strength comparable to 5 emperors, even if he killed more than 100 black wolves that were only at the level of 1 emperor, in the end, he should at least have the strength to escape when facing that 5 emperors black wolf. However, the level of the flame mantra largely limited him. According to Yi Tianqian, if he could get another monarch flame, the flame mantra could evolve. However, it would take at least another year or so for the Chaos Great Monarch Flame to create 3,000 Lightning Monarch Flames. And during this period of time, the only thing he could do was to increase his strength as much as possible, and end the battle as quickly as possible. Only then would he be able to reduce the restriction of the flame mantra on him. As soon as the jade bottle appeared, the hot fire energy within it floated out. The moment it came into contact with the air, the sound of Origin Monarch Key burning immediately rang out. Taking a light breath, Xiaoyan took off his shirt, revealing his thin upper body. Although the muscles on his body were not particularly obvious, his thin body was filled with strength. According to Elder Yi's instructions, Xiaoyan poured out a little bit of the sticky red liquid from the jade bottle and evenly smeared it on his lower abdomen. As soon as the liquid touched his skin, Xiaoyan felt a burning pain spreading from his lower abdomen. In an instant, the skin on his upper body turned red, and a heart-piercing feeling of grilling kept stimulating Xiaoyan's nerves. Clenching his teeth tightly, Xiaoyan endured the pain and continued smearing the red liquid. Gradually, the intense burning pain seemed to have reduced a lot. At the same time, within his dantian, the Origin Monarch Key began to surge crazily. The Origin chains also made whooshing sounds. Within the Origin Monarch Crystal, the Origin Monarch Key also began to emit buzzing sounds. The Origin chains that had yet to form also gradually grew due to the infusion of the Origin Monarch Key. Sensing that there was an obvious effect, a look of joy flashed across Xiaoyan's eyes. He put the jade bottle into the storage ring and quickly formed a hand seal. In an instant, the Origin Monarch Key around his body crazily surged into Xiaoyan's body. After passing through the layer of fiery red medicinal liquid on the surface of his body, most of the impurities in the Origin Monarch Key were removed, leaving only the purest Origin Monarch Ki that entered Xiaoyan's body. As soon as the Origin Monarch Ki entered Xiaoyan's body, they followed the circulation route of the flame mantra and instantly poured into the Origin Monarch crystal. Under the refinement of the Origin Monarch crystal, they poured into the growing Origin chains. Along with the sound of metal colliding, the Origin chains also began to take shape. At the same time, Xiaoyan's aura was also slowly growing. After the fiery red medicinal liquid on his skin disappeared, the fourth Origin chain still hadn't been completed. Sensing this, Xiaoyan couldn't help but shake his head. That huge Origin Monarch Ki just now was even half of the medicinal strength of the fusion pill that Zhao Qingshan had given him, but it couldn't even condense a single Origin chains. It seemed that when he advanced to a higher level in the future, he would need even more Origin Monarch Ki. Looking at the remaining half of the red medicinal liquid in the jade bottle, Xiaoyan helplessly smiled. It seemed like Elder Yi also knew his situation and had also prepared well. He once again endured the pain and smeared the remaining medicinal liquid all over his upper body. This time, the burning sensation was even more intense than the previous time. One could even hear the sound of the medicinal liquid burning his skin. Xiaoyan's body trembled slightly. He allowed the medicinal liquid to burn his upper body until it was completely red. Both of his eyes were tightly shut as another wave of dense Origin Monarch Ki surged into Xiaoyan's body. At this moment, Xiaoyan's body was like an engine that was circulating rapidly within his body. He circulated the Origin Monarch Ki along the route of the flame mantra and injected it into the Origin Monarch crystal. The Origin Monarch crystal was swiftly refined and merged into the Origin chains, while the Origin chains was slowly growing at a speed that was not visible to the naked eye. Wah! With a metallic sound, the fourth Origin chains finally took shape. Like a huge bronze chain, under the control of Xiaoyan's mind, it began to penetrate through all the meridians in the former's body. From the outside, Xiaoyan could no longer care about the pain all over his body. His mind was tightly staring at his body, guiding the Origin chains. With his previous experience, in just a moment, the fourth Origin chains, just like the first three, steadily penetrated all the meridians in his body. As the four Origin chains resonated, Xiaoyan's long-suppressed aura suddenly erupted. The aura that was much more intense than the three emperors slowly rose from Xiaoyan's body. The strong airflow caused the surrounding gravel to fly everywhere. The fourth Origin chains was as thick as a baby's arm, and it contained a huge Origin Monarch Ki. Feeling the strength that was several times stronger than before, Xiaoyan let out a sigh of relief. In one breath, 4 sovereigns meant that he could fight against an ordinary 6-path sovereign, and his strength had increased once again. It's quite fast. Just as Xiaoyan was planning on the next step of cultivation, Yi Tianqian suddenly appeared. There was a smile on his handsome face. Elder Yi. Xiaoyan saw Yi Tianqian suddenly appear and hurriedly greeted him. With his current strength, he would never be able to enter the eyes of the former. However, Yi Tianqian had clearly told him that he wouldn't harm him. In that case, Xiaoyan was naturally delighted to be able to stay together with an ultimate saint expert. A single instruction from the ultimate saint expert was equivalent to years of hard work. Although there were no shortcuts to cultivating, this was a method that could prevent him from taking many detours, and it was something Xiaoyan could only wish for. Yi Tianqian did not respond and just continued, "After all, this illusion realm of mine is not like the forest domain where you can train to your heart's content. Since you have advanced to the 4th Dao Sovereign Realm, with the huge amount of Origin Monarch Ki you need to advance, it is still too early to advance to the 5th Dao Sovereign Realm, but I will not slow your cultivation down by leaving you here. It's very difficult for you to increase your own strength, but I can teach you a monarch skill, how about it?" Hearing this, Xiaoyan's eyes lit up, and he smiled faintly. Chapter End. Chapter 40. Secret Art of Emperor Flame. Currently, Xiaoyan's strongest monarch skill was the incomplete version of the Sky Spill Fist. As one of the 4 punches of the Heavenly Silence Fist, although the Sky Spill Fist was only a high-grade monarch art, its power was extremely powerful. After Xiaoyan advanced to the Sovereign Realm, it became easier for him to use the Sky Spill Fist. When Xiaoyan was still a fighting monarch, the Origin Monarch Ki in his body could only be used 4 or 5 times, but now, it was enough for him to squander. Even so, as his strength increased, Xiaoyan felt the lack of the monarch skill in his hand. It was still alright for him to fight with the devil beast, but if he were to fight someone, he would definitely be the one at a disadvantage if he did not have the flexible monarch skill. Therefore, when he heard that Yi Tianqian was going to teach him the monarch skill, his heart began to pound. Could the monarch skill in the ultimate saint expert be an ordinary item? Thinking of this, Xiaoyan felt his breathing quicken. Elder Yi, what level is the monarch skill? He couldn't wait to ask this question. It couldn't be a low-grade monarch art, or at least a monarch spell. Yi Tianqian smiled. What he said made the smile on Xiaoyan's face freeze. Mid-grade monarch art. Xiaoyan, who had just recovered from his shock, frowned and said, Elder Yi, a mid-grade monarch art is worthy of you teaching me personally. Yi Tianqian chuckled after hearing this, it's good that you know who I am. A mid-grade monarch art is not worth teaching me, but this mid-grade monarch art is not an ordinary one. Oh, Xiaoyan's heart skipped a beat, and he pondered for a moment. He asked cautiously, could it be that this monarch art can evolve into some monarch arts? Yi Tianqian glared at Xiaoyan, then cleared his throat and said, little guy, don't go that far. Even if I give you the monarch arts now, will you be able to use it? This monarch skill is not ordinary because it is not for people to cultivate. Xiaoyan was startled. It was not for people to cultivate the monarch skill. Actually, to be more precise, this is no longer a kind of monarch skill. It is more like a secret technique. Yi Tianqian thought for a moment and said, perhaps it's more appropriate to call it a monarch flame secret skill. Monarch flame secret skill. Xiaoyan first whispered to himself, then his mind suddenly moved. His eyes were filled with shock as he looked at Yi Tianqian. Elder Yi, could it be that this thing is for the monarch flame to cultivate? Yi Tianqian nodded under Xiaoyan's shocked gaze. That's right. I have said it before. The monarch flame was a sacred item of a great world. No one could imagine its true strength. In essence, it has a human body. However, the structure of their bodies was not that of a real human. It was very difficult to cultivate the monarch skill of a human. Therefore, this monarch flame secret skill is a monarch skill that is suitable for cultivating monarch skills. Pausing for a moment, Yi Tianqian continued. Not only does a sacred item like the monarch flame have the secret skill, as far as I know. The other 11 sacred items also have their own secret skill. Furthermore, there aren't any other sacred items among the 12 sacred items. There are also many who possess the secret skill. After saying that, Yi Tianqian stretched out his hand, and a ball of red flames with a hint of gold appeared. Your Chaos Great Monarch Flame is still a bit far away from the Sovereign Master realm. If you cultivate the Monarch Flame secret skill, I think you can fight the Sovereign Master. After listening to Yi Tianqian's words with endless shock, Xiaoyan subconsciously swallowed his saliva. Suddenly, as if he had realized something, he asked curiously, Elder Yi, you are so familiar with this Monarch Flame secret skill. Could it be that you also have the Monarch Flame? Yi Tianqian snorted lightly and said with some pride and pride. That is, as an alchemist saint master who was once famous throughout the various regions, how could I not have Monarch Flame? As his voice fell, Yi Tianqian waved his sleeve. In the next moment, a drop of blue water appeared in front of Xiaoyan. The moment the drop of water appeared, the Chaos Great Monarch Flame seemed to have encountered an expert. The flame immediately shook violently. The fire dimmed down a lot, as if it was bowing to the drop of water. Xiaoyan looked at the strange water droplet in front of him with a serious expression. Although the water droplet was not the size of his fingernail, it contained a huge amount of energy that made Xiaoyan's heart tremble. It was as if he could see an endless wave rushing towards him, burning everything in its way into nothingness. This Monarch Flame is called Refining Monarch Hai Tianyan. It is ranked 24 on the Monarch Flame ranking. This Monarch Flame only exists in a bottomless abyss. When it is at its peak, it can turn into a huge wave that is tens of thousands of meters long. Nothing under this huge wave will exist. Yi Tianqian casually said and put away the water droplet. Xiaoyan's eyes sparkled. When it was at its peak, it indicated that it was extremely weak. It seemed like the battle back then was really intense to be able to cause such a serious injury to the Monarch Flame. But the Thousand Leaves Ancient Monarch Fire that made my name spread across the world is the Thousand Leaves Ancient Monarch Fire. The Thousand Leaves Ancient Monarch Fire is ranked 16th on the Monarch Flame ranking, and its power is enough to shake the heavens and earth. Your current strength is still too weak, so I won't let you see it." Yi Tianqian coughed lightly, and said. When he heard the first sentence of Yi Tianqian, Xiaoyan felt incomparably shocked in his heart. Having two kinds of monarch flames was enough to prove Yi Tianqian's strength. When he thought of the supreme saint who killed Yi Tianqian, Xiaoyan was incomparably shocked in his heart. Yi Tianqian was a mighty supreme saint, and then an alchemist with extremely powerful soul force. Lastly, he had two kinds of monarch flame. At that time, Yi Tianqian could easily deal with a supreme saint of the same level. He might even be able to fight someone of a higher level than him, but even so, he was still killed. How powerful was the saint who killed Yi Tianqian? Yi Tianqian's last sentence made Xiaoyan smile. He didn't want to expose Yi Tianqian's obvious excuse. It wasn't because he was too weak. It was probably because the Thousand Leaves ancient monarch fire was injured and the source of the fire that he couldn't move anymore. Back then, I was just a monarch cultivation warrior. The Thousand Leaves ancient monarch fire appeared in an ancient desert in Middle Domain. After it appeared, it attached itself to a tree that had been growing for billions of years. With the help of the Bodhi, it had killed more than a dozen heavenly sovereign warriors. It forced countless of people to retreat. After I succeeded, I was ambushed during the refining process. I almost died. Luckily, refining monarch Hai Tianyin neutralized it in my body before I successfully absorbed it. When mentioning the dangers of the past, fear still flashed in Yi Tianqian's eyes. It could be seen that the dangers Yi Tianqian had suffered in order to obtain the Thousand Leaves ancient monarch fire were not something that could be summarized in a few words. Although the Thousand Leaves ancient monarch fire is only ranked 16th, it is still extremely powerful. The top 3 on the monarch flame ranking has already become a legend. The 4th monarch flame has also disappeared for a long time. This means that the true ranking of the Thousand Leaves ancient monarch fire is 12. Yi Tianqian hurriedly added, as if he was afraid that Xiaoyan would look down on his famous monarch flame. Xiaoyan sighed deeply in his heart. Under the constant stimulation, a ripple finally appeared in his calm heart. It was indeed worthy of being called an ultimate saint expert. It was actually able to subdue such a powerful monarch flame. It was very easy for Xiaoyan to imagine the power of the Thousand Leaves ancient monarch fire. It was likely that the Thousand Leaves ancient monarch fire would be able to easily incinerate the heavenly sovereign expert at its peak. This monarch flame's secret skill was obtained by me when I obtained the Thousand Leaves ancient monarch fire. With the Thousand Leaves ancient monarch fire's strength, this monarch flame's secret skill has broken through the monarch arts and reached the holy arts. However, when you use your Chaos Great Monarch Flame, the most you can do is to use a mid-grade monarch art. Shaking his head gloomily, Xiaoyan couldn't help but smack his lips. The holy arts was a monarch skill that was much stronger than the monarch arts. The monarch skill in the big world was divided into 2 grades and 6 grades. The lowest grade was the monarch arts, the monarch spell, the monarch art, and the higher grade was the low-grade saint technique, the high-grade saint technique, and the holy arts. However, the higher-grade monarch skill like the saint techniques only existed in legends. Even if there was one, it could be considered a sacred object and could not be reached. To be more precise, high-grade monarch skill were extremely rare. Those who could possess them were either from large families or top-grade experts. Normally, even some of the top emperor cultivation experts only had a few low-grade monarch skill of the monarch arts grade. The scarcity of high-grade monarch skill could be seen from this. To the current Xiaoyan, the monarch arts was an extremely powerful monarch skill. Even a low-grade monarch spell was enough to make up for the limitations brought by the flame mantra. However, this monarch flame secret skill was merely a mid-grade emperor art. It was simply too low-grade. Xiaoyan could only say these words in his heart, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. Immediately, he said respectfully, "Elder Yi, please enlighten me." Yi Tianqian chuckled, his eyes looking at Xiaoyan became more and more satisfied. He said, "Whether you can learn it or not will depend on the tacit understanding between you and the Chaos Great Monarch Flame." As he spoke, he flicked his finger. The Chaos Great Monarch Flame arrived in front of Xiaoyan and transformed into a Xiaoyi. After jumping onto Xiaoyan's shoulder, Yi Tianqian's expression became slightly serious. He stretched out his palm, and a blood-red beam shot out from his palm like a bolt of lightning. It turned into a fire beast that was as tall as a man in the air, like a wolf or a tiger. His body was burning with raging flames, and only his fang-li teeth were exposed. This is the Monarch Flame secret skill I obtained back then. It's called the Wheel of Fire Dao. Under normal circumstances, the Monarch Flame secret skill can transform into any shape it wants. This Wheel of Fire Dao is the shape of a devil beast. The Chaos Great Monarch Flame must devour it in order to learn the Monarch Flame secret skill. Yi Tianqian looked at the ferocious fire beast path in the air. Xiao Yan nodded and looked at the Xiaoyi. At this moment, the latter was looking at the fire beast formed by the fire wheel, with a joyful expression. His eyes were filled with greed. Xiao Yan was the most familiar with this kind of gaze. Whenever he encountered something tempting, his eyes were like this. He patted the Xiaoyi's head. Xiao Yan said softly, "Xiaoyi, you are a sacred monarch flame. A portion can definitely devour it." The Xiaoyi nodded its big head. Its small pink face was filled with seriousness. With a soft squeal, the Xiaoyi turned into a ball of flame and rushed towards the fire beast like a bolt of lightning. The fire beast stood in the air and looked at the Chaos Great Monarch Flame that was charging towards it. It instinctively felt some fear in its heart. However, when it sensed the strength of the Xiaoyi, the fear in its eyes immediately lessened. With a furious roar, the fire beast also charged towards the Xiaoyi with layers of flames. The beast and the fire crashed into each other like two shooting stars, producing a huge explosion sound. In the next moment, a ball of fire flew out from the smoke produced by the explosion, and instantly turned into a fire net that was dozens of meters in size, firmly wrapping the fire beast in the middle. Within the fire net, the fire beast had fallen into the trap of the Xiaoyi due to its carelessness. Immediately, it began to struggle violently, and its furious roars could be heard without an end. As the fire beast struggled, the sound of the fire net being torn could be heard continuously. Just as Xiao Yan was worrying, Yi Tianqian suddenly said, "The Chaos Great Monarch Flame isn't a match for the Monarch Flame secret skill. Little guy, you go ahead and attack." Xiao Yan was startled. When he saw Yi Tianqian pointing at the top of his skull, he suddenly realized what was happening. He closed his eyes and moved his mind. A surge of soul force rushed out from between Xiaoyan's eyebrows and bombarded the fire beast in the smoke. Feeling Xiaoyan's soul power, which was much stronger than an ordinary person's, Yi Tianqian's eyes sparkled. He looked at Xiao Yan with a thoughtful look. Woo! Along with a miserable cry, Xiao Yan opened his eyes with a pale face. The strike just now seemed to have hit an iron plate, causing his soul to feel a slight pain. No one in the Fighting Key continent could match his soul as a sovereign realm expert. However, he had suffered such a great injury just by trying to attack it. He didn't even dare to think about using it to concoct pills. The effect of Xiao Yan's soul attack was quite obvious. Caught off guard, Xiao Yan had injured the beast's origin. The fire beast's body trembled, and its footsteps became hurried. The Chaos Great Monarch Flame took the opportunity to increase the intensity of the fire, and like a fire net that covered the heaven and earth, it once again engulfed the fire beast. Chapter end. Hi guys, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.